dog and go around the city. Behold, they belch forth with their mouth, swords are in their lips. For they say, who hears? And I read these two verses of this psalm because it kind of identifies the enemy he's talking about as the dogs. The Canaanites, cursed people, were the dogs. I think of the scripture in the last part of Revelations, how the dogs are outside the city walls. But these cursed ones that he's describing, he goes on to say this about them in verse 11. Do not slay them, lest my people forget. Now that's just the opposite of the way sometimes we'd respond. Our idea is that let's get them out of here and then we'll have it taken care of. But he said, don't slay them, lest my people forget. In other words, there was a purpose for these people. One of the purposes is that we learn. It says, going on in verse 11, scatter them by thy power and bring them down, O Lord, our shield. That footnote on the New American Standard, and by the way, I've been studying into this thing of the King James only versus the New American Standard and that type of thing. All I can say is stay tuned, but I have greater appreciation now for the New American Standard Bible than I ever have in my life. It's a tremendous translation. And the side note here on this verse 11, where it says scatter them, it points out, it says make them wander. Now, Cain's descendants were wanderers. The cursed ones, if you read about in Jeremiah 24 of the rotten figs, they were scattered to wander. I, in this last year, have done some studying into the group of people who wander called gypsies. And they wander. But they claim actually to be descendants of Cain. I thought that was interesting. But the Lord said, let them wander. Why? Because there's a purpose for them. Don't hurt them. Now it goes on to say in verse 13, destroy them. In wrath, destroy them, that they may be no more. And I wondered when I was reading this passage in Psalms, why would he say in verse 11, do not slay them, and in verse 13 he says, destroy them? Does that seem dialectical to you? Well, I think there's an answer to it. Everything has its purpose. The Bible tells us even the wicked are made for the day of destruction. The best they can do is buy a little more time, another quarter of play, so to speak. I've made a note here. You might want to do the same. Isaiah 34, verse 5, next to verse 13 of Psalms 59. Because there it talks about the descendants of Esau, Edom. They were cursed people as well. That a destruction was devoted for their time. They had a time. But in the meantime, David said, don't do anything to them, lest your people forget. I brought to the pulpit with me some illustrations concerning this thing of words and war. Now, the first one I have is from a movie that I had watched several years ago, and I went out and I rented the video just to get this sound bite off of it so that you can hear it. And it talks about war. And what it was the man that was speaking was a Jewish individual that was into computers and hacking into systems and that type of thing. And he was talking to an old friend of his that they had been rebels back in the 60s during the Vietnam War demonstrations. And at the very end of the movie, he makes a point as he's trying to get his Goyim buddy to go along with him. And they sometimes tell stories as they tell stories, if you know what I mean. And this is one of them. Listen to it.
A war out there, old friend. A world war. And it's not about who's got the most bullets. It's about who controls the information. What we see and hear, how we work, what we think. It's all about the information.
He said there's a war out there, a world war. It's not about bullets. It's about what? Words. Information. How you see things and perceive things. Could you hear that? They come by these things naturally. Now, I've said that they lie from birth. Deception is something that just is natural. Another movie that came to my mind, and I rented it this weekend so I could get the sound bite off of it, was a movie called Big Business. Did anybody ever see that movie? had Beth Midler in it, and forget the other person. But anyway, it was about a switching of twins when they were born. There was a set of twins born to a cursed family, and a set of twins born to an old, down-the-earth farm family. And the two twins got separated, so there was one twin in each family. I mean, they were, does that make sense? They were identical twins, but they got separated, so it looked like they were not identical twins. And it went on, see, they understand the story. It went on to show how the one twin was completely out of place in the country. The quilting bees and the animals and that type of thing. She always longed for the city. And the other twin that was misplaced, she was in the city with her cursed so-called sister, and she longed for the country. But anyway, in the scene, Beth Midler is the one sister that loved the city. Of course, Cain went and built a what? A city. They have an infatuation with the city, the skyscrapers, and that type of thing. But she made a remark to her sister. I don't know if you can hear it. Let's see, and I'll tell you if you don't. She said to her sister, "What is this hideous compulsion you have to be honest?" You see, they understand, but see, we're as strange to them as they are to us. This hideous compulsion that you have to be honest. Now, another soundbite that I brought to the pulpit, just in this area of the art of lying, is a story about a man that was living a lie. And I don't want to give the impression that we cannot become twofold more son of hell than they. I don't want to give that impression at all. In fact, that's just another way of saying we become Judaized. This is a story about a man on Wall Street who was not of the cursed lineage. But when you lay down with dogs, you get up with fleas. And this is what happened to that man. Another way to say it is evil companions corrupt good morals. But this man learned to live a lie. Actually, I think they tell the story that they